What's up Guardians, Chris here and welcome back to a new video. Today we're taking a look at one of the most sought after weapons in Destiny, the Hopscotch Pilgrim, and we're going to be comparing it to the closest rival, the Messenger. Most people agree that the Hopscotch Pilgrim is the better of the two guns, but it's extremely rare due to it only dropping from Dragon Strikes and occasionally from level 28 Prison of Elders, thus meaning that the slightly inferior Messenger is much more common. But is the Hopscotch Pilgrim really worth grinding for? In this video, we'll weigh up the pros and cons to the Hopscotch as compared to the Messenger, and hopefully I'll help you decide if it's worth grinding for it. So first things first, to give a quick answer, if you have the Messenger, I don't think you should grind for the Hopscotch Pilgrim. However, if you're unable to get the Messenger for one reason or another, then go ahead and grind. The reason being that the closest you'll get to one of these guns is the spare change, which only drops from Crucible, and this weapon has significantly lower stability, a smaller magazine meaning that brace frame is less viable, and it just doesn't have as good stats overall. It's quite inferior to the other two guns here, though it's still not a bad weapon so to speak, but it just doesn't quite compete with the Hopscotch and the Messenger. So how do you acquire these weapons? Which is harder to get? Technically speaking, the Hopscotch isn't very hard to get, it's simply extremely rare. As previously mentioned, this only drops in Dragon Strikes in level 28 Prison of Elders. It's a very rare drop and it took me roughly 20 strikes to get it, but I simply got lucky. Many people have had 50 or 100 strikes even without ever seeing this weapon drop, so it's extremely time consuming to get your hands on. Meanwhile, the Messenger is a very common drop from the chest in the Lighthouse. I understand that not everyone is going to be able to get to the Lighthouse, in which case you'll need at least 7 wins on a single passage to acquire it from Brother Vance, given he is selling the Messenger on the set week, or you can get it from the gold tier package at 8 wins. So relatively speaking, the Messenger is harder to acquire, but it's a much more common drop, while the Hopscotch is very easy to acquire, but it requires a lot of time. So how does the two weapons compare? The base stats on the Hopscotch is what makes it so sought after. The two guns share the same rate of fire at 330 rounds per minute, and impact dealing 38 damage to the head and 26 damage to the body in the Crucible. The Messenger has superior range with the stat reading at 59 compared to the Hopscotch at 45. Though this is rarely a factor due to the relatively small maps in the Crucible. And the stability is where the Hopscotch really shines, with a base stat of 68 compared to the Messenger's 59. This means that you can actually max out the stability given you get a stability buff, either brace frame or hand laid stock. The Messenger can almost max out stability with perfect balance equipped, but the stat can only be buffed to roughly 95 out of 100, so it's not quite maxed out. It's also worth mentioning that the Hopscotch has a faster reload speed and a bigger magazine size at 30 compared to the Messenger's 24. However, this ability is really what makes the difference for the Hopscotch. You essentially trade off a minor decrease in range for the ability to max out your stability. As previously mentioned, range isn't that important in the Crucible, but with the right perk set, the Hopscotch is undoubtedly the better gun of the two. Between the two stability buffs, brace frame is the better option as it will decrease the magazine size from 30 to 24, bringing it in line with the Messenger, but there's no real downside, then both guns will have 24, but you will have maximum stability on your Hopscotch as compared to 95 out of 100 on the Messenger. In terms of hand laid stock, cutting 33% of the range isn't really a good option since that's where it actually becomes noticeable on the bigger maps like Widow's Court or Pantheon. If you're shooting across the map, you'll have a harder time hitting and the damage drop off will be quite noticeable, so I'd recommend brace frame over hand laid stock. But other than this ability, there are a few downsides to the Hopscotch. The Messenger already comes with a perfect perk set with Third Eye and Head Seeker. Those are the ideal perks for a pulse rifle, and while you can get these perks for the Hopscotch, you have to rely on RNG to get them. You'll most likely need to gamble away tons of modes and weapon parts. And while there are other good perks, Head Seeker is almost non-negotiable for this archetype of pulse rifles, and having your radar while aiming is hugely valuable. Among other good perks that you can get instead of Third Eye are Feeding Frenzy, which I have on mine, and Outlaw. Both are very solid perks, but as I've said before, Third Eye is ideal. So not only do you rely on RNG to get this weapon, you also rely on RNG to make the weapon good, as opposed to the Messenger, which just comes with the perfect perk set. So essentially what you're doing is you're putting tons and tons of time into getting this weapon, you're putting tons of materials into getting this weapon, and what you get is a gun with slightly less range but very slightly more stability. While it is a better weapon, as I have said earlier, it's just not that much better of a weapon than the Messenger, and if I were to make the decision to grind for another Hopscotch, for a Hopscotch, given I didn't have one, I would say no, just don't do it. The Messenger is slightly inferior, but just it's not that much inferior. You will barely notice a difference. The Messenger is already a laser beam, it's a 2-burst killing machine, and just getting that, maybe a better sight and a slight bit more stability is really not worth it. So that'll do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and found it helpful. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them down below in the comment section. And follow me on Twitter at ApexChris. Link will be in the description, and I will see you next time, Guardians.